Welcome back, everybody, to this last panel discussion, which will be closing these 2 climate days. And to close off, we've got an amazing panel here with 3 chief sustainability officers globally. So please appreciate the effort they made to join the panel today. And the panel is going to be moderated by Jean-Michel Gauthier, who I'm sure doesn't require any introduction. Is the Executive Director of the Energy and Finance Chair at HEC. And with that, without further ado, the floor is yours, Jean-Michel.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for these kind words of introduction, Igor. Always a pleasure to be your guest. So now we've got the daunting task of closing these amazing 2 days, 2 HEC Climate Days, and we're going to address a major issue, which is what is actually the role, after we've seen the role of entrepreneurs, innovation, we're going to now address what the role should be of leaders, of executives, of those who are really running a company at the most senior level. So the net zero emission by 2050 is a game changer, as you would probably have heard about over these past 2 days. And it actually calls for a lot more than just meeting carbon neutrality by 2050. It calls for a major redesign of the way we do business, of the way we are organized, of the kind of people we want in companies, whether we should, it also entails, of course, the fact that we need to upskill or reskill all our labor force and all the set of competencies that we've got in our companies. And in many ways, that also boils down, and the energy transition boils down to how leaders are going to be impactful enough to kickstart the process and go through the process. And tonight we've got 4 representatives, four leaders who are going to share their views, their vision, and how they see corporates going forward through to carbon neutrality. So I'm going to start with we've got 3 chief sustainability officers tonight, and we've got a climate expert. And I'm going to start with the person who is probably the farthest away from us, because she's in Boston. She's responsible for the US operation of Schneider Electric in Boston. We have Mrs. Gwenaelle Avice-Huet, who, as I said, is Chief Strategy, actually, and Chief Sustainability Officer. So good morning, Gwenaelle. I guess it's morning for you. And then closer to home, we've got Mrs. Kare Lemasson, who's also Sustainability Director and Open Innovation Director at a lab, Laboratoire Expanscience, which may or may not be as famous as one of his leading products, which for anyone who's been a mother or a father is Mustela, which is, I understand, baby care product. Expanscience is a leading laboratory in pharmaceutical and also Cosmo dermatology or something like this. Sorry about that. I have to confess my absolute ignorance and my illiteracy on the subject. So you will introduce yourself as well. I've also got Hacina. Hacina is a very long-standing friend of HEC. She's contributing a lot of value to our certificates here on campus. Hacina is Chief Sustainability Officer of Société Générale worldwide. So you represent the whole bank. Yeah, it's a very, very big onus. And then finish off with, sorry, you as a representative of the male gender here, you have to come last, and I don't count even. We've got Nikolaos Kordevas, who is Senior Manager in charge of Climate at KPMG. I'm going to fire a few questions. We're going to address 3 major questions over these upcoming hour and a half. I'm going to ask all our panelists here to help us give their vision as to what a leader should be. What is the definition of a leader? What are the major skills and talents that are expected from a leader? What should he do? How do you recognize a leader? That would be my first question. And then we'll move to another question, which will be all about the means and levers and kind of actions that a leader should put together in order to, get the business ticking away and move towards the energy transition and achieve combat against climate change. And then we'll finish off with what do we actually call a climate success? How will we measure achieving climate success? So I'm going to start with you, Gwenaelle, because you are as I said, you are miles and miles away beyond the oceans. So Gwenaelle, how do you will say a few words about yourself, because my presentation could have been a bit short. How do you see the responsibilities of a business leaders? What should a leader, an executive, do in order to kickstart this climate action process?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here. Sorry not to be physically there, but happy to participate. So just a few words about myself, because you're talking about leadership. In fact, for me, it's a journey. I started my career working for the French government on energy transition and climate. This is my passion. And therefore, throughout my career, I just wanted to make a difference on this front. And I think that when it comes to a leader, as you mentioned, I would define myself as a climate leader, meaning wanted to always pursue this journey, wanted to embark people in this journey because we are not alone, and wanted to drive the business in a way that we can make a difference. Then I worked with ENGIE for 11 years, and I was responsible for renewables energy worldwide, meaning how to make sure that that energy transition is happening concretely with numbers of different technologies across the world in an environment that is growing fast and fast in terms of renewables development. And I joined Schneider Electric more than a year ago. And my position is at the executive committee level, and I'm in charge of strategy, merger and acquisition, and sustainability. And why is that? In fact, our CEO wanted to merge all the different components, because when we talk about leadership in climate, in fact, it's tackling every single element of the business of the company. At the end of the day, we need to think through the business towards environment, towards how to embark more sustainability as a key vector in every decision that we are making. Therefore, it was for Schneider Electric, we started a journey 15 years ago on sustainability, but I think that it used to be in the past some separated department from the rest of the group, and now it's fully embarked in the rest of the business, because we think that our business should be looked at in an angle where we can make a difference on sustainability. And so the role that I see when it comes to a leadership position on climate is first repositioning a company in order to have a business strategic approach that is in line with our sustainability commitment. But it's not only thinking about it, it's also implementing it. And when it comes to implementation for me, it's to make sure that our business, all the equipment that we are selling, all the business that we are having in different countries is enabling the transition to happen for our clients, for our suppliers, and therefore to have an impact on the broader ecosystem beyond the company itself. So for me, implementation is implementation for ourselves as a company, but not only, it's implementation throughout the whole ecosystem with partners, with suppliers, and with customers. And at the end of the day, what makes a difference is the culture of the company, making sure that it's embedded everywhere within the company. Usually we think profit, yes, it's right. As a company, we need to look at profits. But at the same time, we need to make sure that people understand how important it is to have a company that is very much focused on sustainability, to train our people, to make sure that they're ambassadors of our sustainability commitment. And that's not easy because in fact, it's quite technical, because it's quite transformational. But at the end of the day, I think that as a leader, our responsibility is to make sure that we embark all our companies, employees in this journey. So I would say, as a leader, for me, it's repositioning of the company, it's implementation for the company itself, but the whole ecosystem with suppliers, partners, customers. It's the culture of the company. It's to mobilize employees and everybody inside the company to make a difference. And last but not least, when it comes to sustainability, we're not thinking only on the impact on the environment that we have to reduce, enabling the energy transition, but we are also thinking about social and governance, the whole spectrum of ESG or CSR commitment that we may have. Especially nowadays, we think about social inequalities as one of the biggest challenges. And if we want to attract new talent within our companies, we need to tackle those topics. We need to tackle social diversity, equity, inclusion for all our employees. And therefore, when we are looking at a leader in climate, I would say it's much broader. It's a leader for ESG principles, where we have commitments on the 3 different areas: environmental, social, and governance principles.
Thank you very much, Gwenaelle. So we really understood that the action of a leader goes way beyond the boundary of the company and the company itself, and it goes, reaching out to all the ecosystems and mobilizing everyone at every level. I'm turning to Karen now. Karen, as a big lab in big pharmaceutical, what is your vision of a climate leader?
Hello, everybody. Sorry not to be with you today, but I'm very glad to come back to HEC, where I studied CSR actually a few years ago. First of all, yes, I'm working, I'm in charge of CSR, as you say, as a member of the executive team, but I'm as well in charge of open innovation. And I'm saying that because you will understand as well that it's very important to make it happen and with other inside the company and outside the company. So I quite agree with what you just said before. For me, a leader in the climate subject is it's a very big question, because nowadays we know that we have to contribute very quickly to decrease our carbon emission, but as well to see the connection with the other impact, biodiversity, social issues. So a leader has to think in a complex way and to tackle different issues together. So because you can take a climate action that are very bad for the biodiversity or for the social issues. So we have to take all those issues all together. But I would say what's important for a leader or an executive team is to set the ambition, to say, yes, we want to go to the moon, but now people in the company, outside the company, you are going to help me to reach this objective and tell me how we're going to reach it. So I have to say that the empowerment of your employees and as well of your stakeholders, it's key to reach this kind of objectives. So I would say to set the ambition to be concrete. For example, we have been working on CSR issues for more than 17 years. And a few years ago, 2 years ago, we wanted to launch a new program. And we have done it in a very cooperative and open way. So we set ambition. We want to be in 10 years, 40, we have 20 years to be a regenerative company. Let's start now. How can we become a regenerative company and all the issues we spoke about? And then we work with lots of voluntary in the company to set up a program, a 10, 20 years program to reach this target. So I would say to have ambition, cooperation is key as well as a leader. I think the new way of working is very important. The leadership is not the same one. The leadership is the ability to work in a complex area with lots of different skills and people, and to give the space for cooperation. So it's not competition. You know, we speak a lot about cooperating with your competitors, but I think you have to be able to cooperate inside and outside the company, which is quite new, I think, as a mindset. So I would say it's very important to as a leader to liberate the energy and the talents of your employees to be the actors of the change, to be change makers. Otherwise, it will take years to change our business model. So that's what I wanted to say for this question.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, we understand that, of course, being a climate leader includes, of course, setting out the ambitions and sharing the vision, managing complexity, managing all sorts of cooperations between the various stakeholders. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that point, which we'll develop a bit later, when we address all the means, all the levers that have got to be activated. I'm turning to Hacina now. Hacina, you're going to introduce yourself, and you're going to be the big flag carrier of the banking industry of a global bank. So what is the vision there? What is a climate leader?
I'm under pressure, clearly, thank you. So I don't want to say too much about myself. I'm just a banker. I've been a banker for 25 years in all types of things. My best years were when I was in charge of export finance, dealing with the emerging world. That was not so long ago, and that's where I fell in love with sustainable development, which in emerging countries is, of course, of the essence. It's not about communication as could have been the case 10 years ago with some companies. It's of the essence for the development of the daily needs of, for the people. So I'm a banker. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I would like to say that if you had asked the question 2 years ago, what is a climate leader? I would have answered a climate leader, talking about the financial industry, is a bank, for example, that is top 3 in the league tables for labelized products, such as green bonds, green loans. That was the thing. We had some specific standards, and that's what we were doing. But very quickly, a lot of companies realized that we do have a common goal. Of course, the Paris Agreement have helped, but things have accelerated very recently. And now we have common goals that are, frankly, hard. These are big challenges, and I completely concur with what my 2 colleague panelists have said, and I'll try to give some examples of what it means in the banking industry. So, frankly, we have a rush, we have trajectories. Many of our clients have taken commitments to align on, net zero trajectories. That means that we will do whatever it takes to align our activities to try and stay below 1.5 degrees. That's extremely ambitious, but a lot of companies have signed up for that. That means today that most of us know that there is a rush. We have to run. We see the end point in 30 years' time, something like that. But frankly, we don't have the map. We don't have a common GPS. And that's very new. In the past, you would have clients calling you, I'm going to need $1 billion for this power plant there. Okay, we would structure that. Today, we talk with our clients and we say, look, we have aligned our oil and gas portfolio, our cement portfolio, our automotive portfolio. And that means that you need to tell us how you're going to align yourself, meaning what type of investment are you going to do? Because in 2030, for example, maybe I will have trouble financing you. That's very unusual. So a leader today in our industry is not anymore the guy that has the biggest league table. it's, I think, the partner in coalitions, the partner to set new standards in industries together with the clients. It's about cooperating with our peers, which we would not do really before, you know. It's setting up with the other banks and see, okay, what type of methodologies can we take in common? What does it mean for our clients? It's building coalitions, for example, as we joined the Hydrogen Council some years ago with our clients. And the strange conversation is that today, it's not, can you finance me, as I said, it's, okay, let's think about this, for example, transportation on the road or by the sea. How is this industry going to transform in 10 years, 20 years to reach the goal in 2050? And that's not only as we did before, like I have a mortgage loan that I'm going to offer to my clients. I need to sit down, not only with my clients, but on top of that with the shipyard in the shipping industry, and also with the port infrastructure and the people bringing in energy. Because if my client will switch from heavy fuel to LNG propulsion for his vessel, he needs to make sure that the shipyards will build them, but even more, that there will be some charging stations in all the ports in the world where he will call every week. So that's very new. And it's all at the same time, and frankly, we don't really have the key, so we need to do that together. So for me, leading is inventing, well, setting standards and trying to, well, to collaborate, really.
Yes, thank you, Hacina. I really noted it down. A leader, you know, sets the target, sets the ambition, but as you said, you know, it's all about embarking on a journey without a GPS. So you're moving to an uncharted territory, and so do we know where we're going? Yes, we do, but how? That will be maybe the next question. Nikolaos, we finish with you. You know why? Because you're a consultant.
Yes, thank you very much. So yes, I'm Nikolaos Kordevas.
Tell us, sorry to cut you, maybe you want to tell us also, on a no-names basis, of course, what is your perception of what has just been said? And does that reflect what you see out there on the market, you know, with your clients, the kind of business that you're doing at KPMG? I've forgot to say too much about yourself. You may want to tell us a bit more.
No worries. Well, I agree with all what that has already been said on what is a leader and how leaders can lead their companies in this climate change world. I just wanted to add also that yes, innovation plays a big role. We saw that in the previous panel. How to identify innovation, how to look for it in already existing big corporations, which is even more difficult because you need to start thinking outside the box, to start thinking about how to change your operations in order to create the same service or product, but with low carbon, in a low carbon strategy. How to engage, it is already said, but I think it's really important to be said again, engage the whole value chain of your company, from the upstream to the downstream, so your suppliers, your company itself, and your clients, to find incentives for your clients. I imagine for the banking sector, it's even more difficult sometimes to find incentives for their clients to align with low carbon strategies, if we talk about just climate change, for example, and identify synergies in your sector and in your environment, in your ecosystem, in order to create coalitions and collaborations in order to get there.
Interesting. I'd like to expand a bit on this alignment concept. You know, from what I can see from the various indices, you know, MSCI, etc., you can see that companies who look like they are very, very similar in nature, in the big industry, the key material industry, the heavy, heavy metals or cement, etc. They may well be very similar, and in fact, you discover that one is aligned with 4 degrees Celsius temperature increase anytime soon, and the other one is 2 degrees or 1.8, and they've got the same number. They've got almost the same numbers. So it's very difficult how the journey is calculated and schemed. Is it something that you?
Yes, in fact it's two different concepts to be aligned already and to set a target. So from what I understand, what the 4 degrees company has either set some targets or has engaged itself in really low, ambitious, not really big ambitious plans. But how to evaluate their alignment, it's another thing. So it's where you are now and what is your overall strategy on how to achieve your objectives, your targets, in order to get to 1.5 or well below 2 degrees or 2 degrees strategies. And you mentioned before some sectors where some companies seem similar. Yes, in fact it is, but either one needs to innovate and to start producing the same kind of product or service with new materials, for example, or there will be a disruptor that will emerge in the market. And I have a specific example in my head on the cement industry. There is I don't want to call names. There is a specific French company, a new company that, for example, produces cement without clinker. And clinker is the most emissive product throughout the cement sector. So I think that this company will disrupt the business, the sector, and many companies will need to follow.
I think it may be time for us to turn to the audience. They're all quiet and all behind their seats. I can see that there are some burning questions from the floor. Well, shall we start with you? I think you fired first. So, question for our panelists.
First of all, thank you all for coming here. It's a really great honor to have you in this place this day. First of all, I would really like to express my admiration to Gwenaelle, because it's somebody who had the choice of passing my apprenticeship at Schneider or Total. So today, both companies were, we've been talking a lot about both, but as you can imagine, so the attitude was quite a little bit different. So my question for you is, from strategic point of view, how do you think that Schneider has a lot of marketing and this ecological capital, because we change a lot, we drive changes? Do we need to try to convert it in something maybe commercial into do like active promotion of green, but by making maybe some, like green Nutri-Score, entre guillemets, and, to push our competitors to change as we do? Or does this need to remain something, sacral, something, that we simply do for ourselves because it's right, and we simply, keep going like we do? What do you think about it?
Gwenaelle.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I appreciate your note. So I think that the positioning that we decided through the leadership of our CEO is to say that, the way to differentiate is really to position the company as a green company in a way that, what we sell to our customers is through electrification or digitalization, which are enablers for decarbonization. So the first angle was really to position ourselves as a differentiator in a market that is quite large. So that was our first positioning. Then our second positioning throughout time in the journey, as we mentioned, was to say, well, we want to be what we call an impact company. Impact company is about not having an impact only on ourselves with our operations, but much broader on the whole ecosystem. And therefore, it's working, as I mentioned before, with numbers of different customers in accompanying them to decarbonize. And we have numbers of concrete examples where People are talking about decarbonization, but do not really know how to decarbonize. And therefore, we can help with roadmaps, with discussion on how to measure the carbon footprint and how to reduce the carbon footprint, different ways, different technologies, et cetera, et cetera. So on one side, on customers. And therefore, it's also working with numbers of suppliers. And this is where you have the biggest untapped CO2 emissions that we can reduce. So this is a huge opportunity to have big impact on climate change. And for this one, we've been working with our 1,000 top suppliers in order to help them decarbonize. So it means having an impact much broader than our own operations. And of course, competition is looking at it. Of course, it's good because it's having momentum in a market that is very dynamic because electrification, digitalization is a big trend right now. So I think that we are paving the way in order to have more meaningful impact. And therefore, I think it's good all in all, not only for us, for our customers, suppliers, but obviously competition is looking at it at the same time.
I think Hacina wants to add a comment. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to share with you that you know that when we calculate the carbon emissions, we name them scope 1 and 2, which are essentially what we use for our own operations when we're in industry. Scope 3 is the emission of our value chain, let's say, which is tough to handle. One day when I joined, I was reading the research paper. We have a dedicated ESG research in Société Générale. And I saw a paper about scope 4. And I thought, wow, I never stop learning. And it was about Schneider Electric. Because, so I thought, wow, so scope 1 and 2, what I use for myself, scope 3, what my value chain is issuing, and I should try to ask them to reduce in a way. Otherwise, I'm accountable as well. But now comes scope 4 with Schneider Electric because, as you explained, this is a whole range of solutions to help the clients and the chain as well reduce its own footprint. And this is extremely virtuous as a circle, of course, because in the end, when we will add all these scopes 1, 2, 3, and now 4, this is where we will measure if we succeeded or not.
We may have to change the greenhouse gas protocol on this and introduce the scope 4. There's another question, I think, there. Sorry, can we have a microphone?
Thank you all for your very interesting discussion. And I'd like to add that as a former student, I'm very happy to see that HEC is starting to tackle this very important topic. I have two questions. One is for Ms. Hacina P. You talked about the 2050 target. I think we've been hearing for the past 2 days that we have less than a decade actually to really shift things. So I wanted to know if you had some closer time targets in your strategy. That's my first question. And the second one, and maybe it's a bit provocative, but I've been thinking about that for 2 days now, isn't also the role of a leader to stop an activity? We've been talking about offsetting, about carbon footprint, but we've been talking a lot about business as usual. As a financial organization like banking, you have clients. You took the example of the shipping company wanted to shift to gas for transportation, but we basically know that in 30 years or 50 years we can't carry on with such worldwide transportation of goods, and we will have to relocate production. We will have to really not only change our consumption behaviors, but also we'll have to rethink our whole system, who has been made possible because of cheap fossil energies, worldwide organization, but this has to change. So do you, when you have clients that come to you with such projects, do you also think long term? I mean, 30, 50 years, and what do you do?
Thank you for your questions. I think these are very valid points. So, to start with the timeline, you're completely right. Everybody is committing to 2050, but from there, so it forces us to imagine what it means, and there are various scenarios, especially in France. I think we have had a lot of people working on very valid decarbonation scenarios. And from there, we need to, of course, to come back to 2040 and 30 and maybe 25. So in our case, we have some targets by 2025. And we joined with 100 other banks, a coalition called NZBA, which is the Net Zero Banking Alliance. And we signed last year, and we have until October of this year to set targets on, well, it's not, there is no figure, but on a significant portion of our portfolio in terms of emissions. And so we need to set targets by 2050, of course, but also at the latest by 2030. So you're right, this decade is the most, well, it's the decade of action, otherwise we won't succeed. The problem, to be very transparent, when you take a specific sector, and you put a point on your trajectory by 2030, I mean, either you put it right on the, on the line and you see what happens, or maybe you will have to distort it a little bit because in many industries, technology does not exist. And so we are faced with difficulties, and we are only a kind of synthetic view of the world. The industry, the economy is 80% driven by fossil fuel today. And so, yes, we need, but that's a big dilemma. And what you point out is a very important point. For example, take the shipping industry, the cruise part of the shipping industry. If you look at alignment today, they are nowhere. Why? Because these people will be like hotels in a harbor, but they will use fuel for the whole accommodation and everything. It doesn't work. So what do? We wait another 10 years, we stop financing them completely, but we have them already as clients. Or we put so much pressure, but not alone, because otherwise they will go somewhere else, that in the end, the harbors are going to have renewable energy for electricity plugging, which we call dry ironing, for these vessels in the harbors. But alone, they can't do anything. They need the infrastructure. And in a lot of cases, that's the same, you see? So that's a very important point. Maybe we can have a discussion at cocktail if we're invited to stay, yeah?
You are invited at cocktail, definitely. How could we do without you?
Just if I can add a comment on that, when we're talking about the net zero strategy, we're talking about contributing to achieving net zero. No company itself can be net zero, of course, because to be net zero, you need everybody else to be net zero. And to achieve such a strategy, of course, you need to plan for 2050. The long-term target needs to be that far because, as you said, there are technologies that are not mature enough. For example, the scenarios of IEA predict a lot of, project to 2050 because there is a necessity of CCS, carbon capture storage, and utilization, that it's not really mature yet. That's just an example of a technology. But in order to get there, you need to set a short-term, near-term target to 2030 for a 1.5 degree scenario. And of course, that also depends on the sector. For example, if we are talking about the ICT sector, you cannot plan from now to 2050. It's a sector that changes every year. So in the initiative that is called Science-Based Targets, it's an initiative that basically validates targets for 1.5 degrees or net zero. For such a sector, you can only have until 2030 your targets.
Maybe it's time to move to the second part. Sorry. Sorry.
They're raising hands.
Oh, Karen, sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to ask you a question.
No, I think we have to be very clear. Here we speak about climate. We can think, you know, the debate about innovation. I am in charge of open innovation. I love innovation, but I don't love every innovation. And I don't believe technology will save the world. I think the question in the room was, do we have to stop as companies? You ask for leadership. What I forgot is to say courage and consistency. We took as well the commitment to contribute to the planet neutrality by 2030, so 20 years before the Paris Agreement for Mustela. But to reach that, let's be clear, we will have not only to find new partnership, I agree with what you said, with cargo sailing, with different energy in your factories, etc. But at the end of the day, we have to reduce. Science-based target reduction is good, but I think we have to rethink all our offers. We have to stop the more carbon linked products. It's true for Mustela, huh? We have wipes, which is not very good. We want to slowly to decrease this sailing, but we have to take the courage decision of stopping the business that have a bad impact and accelerating the regenerative business. It's not only about reduction, it's about rethinking our offer and not doing it alone, as we said before, because alone we are too small to succeed that quickly. So I think we should really concentrate on reduction and to stop to travel from all over the world our products, to rethink our offer. But I'm not saying it's easy, I'm not saying we achieved it, but I can tell you that we are trying to find solutions about localization, etc. And to regenerate, if we deliver product or offer, we have to think, which problem do I solve? Not only how can I be less carbon impact, how can I have less carbon impact, but what can I solve today with my offer? Which social issue? Which contribution do I have to the society? Otherwise, don't launch any products anymore. You know what I mean? To create new value. I'm not saying everything is easy, but I think it's the way we have to look at the problem.
I'm glad you said so, Karen, because in that kind of discussion, I've always been of the view that there is always some form of misunderstanding or quid pro quo between reducing carbon or reducing business, or reducing revenues, or reducing EBITDA. And you very, very clearly pointed out that we are talking about reducing carbon, but rejuvenating, you know, creating new businesses. And I'd like to move to our second part, maybe.
Just maybe, if I can add one comment,
all right,
if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry, I see you. Yes, please, go ahead, Gwenaelle.
Sorry. So just because you mentioned the timeline, the time horizon, at Schneider Electric, we took a commitment to be carbon neutral in our operations in 2025, so rather soon. What we do to make it happen is that we consider that we need to communicate externally on our financial results every quarter, and at the same time, communicate on our progress for extra financial results, meaning all our carbon commitments. And that's something that we are doing every quarter, very transparently, so that we show internally and externally that we are serious about it. Of course, there is a part that is about offset, but the bulk of it is about grid material in our products. It's about plastic, reduce the number of plastic use in our product. It's about circularity. It's about a number of things for which we need to invest right now in our products to make sure that the commitment that we have taken in 2025 towards the investors is realized. So just to show you that for us, what matters is not only commitment, but also measuring what we are doing concretely, communicating transparently towards internal world and external world, and having the right investment in place internally to make it happen.
Yeah, we are already addressing the second point, which is what kind of levers do you activate? How do you get there? How do you make sure, as an executive, again, that you're putting in place all the right means and measures to achieve the target? Getting back to you, maybe, Karen, how do you see the way going forward, the means, the levers, how an executive should make it happen fundamentally, and what the obstacles? What are the obstacles?
I think the obstacles and the incentives as well. Well, it's both of them. Of course, we were speaking about technical obstacles. Yeah, it's true. Sometimes you want to have a more green logistic, but you don't find it, or ships, or you want at your factory green. For example, we have a factory 1 hour from Paris. We want to switch from the gas, from biogas, okay? But we don't want any biogas. We want to real impactful biogas. So locally, there is no offer. So we try to see if there is anything we can switch with other companies on the territory to collaborate, to give our water waste and to make biogas and buy something in exchange, you know, to create, sometimes you don't have the offer. That's what you said before, my colleague said before. But I think, okay, accessibility is one point. Accessibility, for example, for recycled plastic. You don't find easily recycled plastic all over the world, and the price is not accessible. Accessibility in technology, that's one point. But I think the most important to make the journey is to have a new compass. I come back to this point, to have the courage to say today, in 5 years, maybe I will reduce this kind of product and I will find new value, not new growth or new volume growth. I will find new value that really is useful to my consumer, or for me, it's parents, but as well people suffering from arthritis, or for the territory where I am. So I solve a social or environmental problem. So this is the regenerative journey I wanted to speak about. And I think this is the only path we have to take to handle the climate problems, not only the climate problems, the planet boundaries problem. I mean, this is the new compass. Today, we are piloting businesses with the P&L with business compass. And we are not looking at the price of nature and what the nature gives to us. If we give a price, if we monitor accountability in the companies, it will help to take the right decision and not the decision that bring us to disaster. So I really milite for a new compass for the companies. I milite for consistency, which is not always easy, like make it clear. We give incentives to our sales force on volume, value maybe sometimes, and on the other hand, we will give them incentives to reduce carbon. Sometimes you need to be very consistent with your employees. And of course, cooperation. As I told you, I think to cooperate with the competitors. As you say about banking, it's the same about cosmetic industry. We launch a consortium with other cosmetic actors, big actors, small actors, because we are too small. Even the big companies are too small to change all the value, change value. So we launch a consortium on, to stop plastic and to find new materials, of course, in a sustainable way. And to work all together to change this, and me alone, I wouldn't succeed doing this. We work with other B Corp, as we are a B Corp. All over the world, we launched the B Corp coalition on cosmetics to work on packaging, logistics, raw materials, agricultural practices, because we use a lot of ingredients in our products. So let's make it good for the biodiversity and the sequestration of carbon. And we worked as well with other companies, not in our supply chain. You heard about the business, la Convention des entreprises pour le climat. So in English, it's a business climate convention in France, 150 companies going together to cooperate and make their journey to regeneration. So for me, it's very important. Courage, consistency to change our compass to change our offer. So big menu, huh? It's challenging, but we have to face that.
Back to you, Gwenaelle. Not maybe new value, not necessarily new growth. This is what I heard from Karen. Would you agree with that?
Yes. So just maybe you were talking also about obstacles. If we have a step back, I think that the main issue we have is to make sure that we remain focused. We are in a very uncertain environment, very volatile in terms of market, in terms of, you know, what the COVID happened and the implication and all the situation right now. We are in a very volatile and uncertain environment. And in that case, sometimes we can lose, we can lose focus. And our role is just to make sure that whatever happens, we remain focused, because what's happening is very, very, very key for the future. First element. The second element, when we look at the numbers of companies worldwide that have been committed to SBTi, we had a record year in 2021, doubled the numbers of companies that were SBTi focused, with more than 2,000 companies across the world. So we can say, well, this is happening. This is very good because all the private sector is going in that direction. But in reality, when we look at the figures, even though there are all those big commitments, and which is extremely positive, in reality, we are very far from reaching the 1.5 degree scenarios, very, very far. It means that if we want to achieve this target, we need to go faster, much faster than what we did in the past years. And therefore, we need more commitment, much more commitment. And therefore, another obstacle may be that we are satisfied because much more commitment, but in reality, we have to face it. Currently, with the path that we're having, we will not meet the 1.5 degree scenarios. So we need to go faster. The third element is that when we look at the CO2 emission, 75 to 80% of the global CO2 emissions are coming from production and consumption of energy. And therefore, we need to focus on this. We need to pay a lot of attention on this. And we were talking about technology, is it available, etc. We are always, or most of the time, looking at the production side. But we can also look at the consumption side. For example, the behaviors, how to consume less energy. And here we have numbers of different technologies that are already available on the market. So how to go faster? For example, buildings, how to enforce incentives to have new buildings that are net zero. This is possible through digitalization, through electrification, we can achieve that. And therefore, the question is really how to make sure that all the available technologies are even well known and well deployed, not only on the production side, but also on the consumption side, with behaviors enabling the energy transition to go faster. And I think that when it comes to incentives, you were talking about it, you can look at different segments. For example, on buildings, you can go faster with building standards, with having all the new buildings being net zero based on the current technologies available on the market. You can also go faster on the transportation side with, EV manufacturing incentives to switch for customers and things like that. For the industry, you can also have some electrification of processes happening in numbers of different industries. So there are rooms in different sectors. The question is not to wait for the new technology to come, but already work on the existing ones, on the production, but also on the consumption side.
Hacina, new cooperation, new commitment, doing business faster. Is that
true?
What, yeah.
True. And
what is your view?
A lot of challenges. I think I do recognize what my colleagues are saying here in my day-to-day life. First, I think in terms of threat is, for us, abandon, because as you pointed out, we need to abandon part of the activities, but abandon activities which we should not abandon. Okay, I'm going to explain. Or abandon activities and then it doesn't change anything because somebody else will do it. That's why we enter into coalitions of like 100 banks. They represent half of the financing on Earth. So I hope that in the end we will hold ourselves. Just to give you an example, we decided to stop, as many French banks, the financing of coal. It was in 2015. So we dropped many different projects in Southeast Asia, which in itself was a problem. We don't have time to elaborate, but we need to think about the fact that people will need access to energy. And if they don't have nuclear or gas and they have coal, they need to use coal. That's another subject, but that is a subject. But anyway, we decided we stop. That was 6 years ago. I looked at the statistics recently. There have been, for the first 10 banks financing this industry, they are all in Asia, $192 billion financing since we stopped, 192. The last 10 banks are European ones, because we all went out. 10 banks in Europe together have financed 4 billion. And the first 10 ones, 192 in coal industry. So you see, in the end, but we don't regret, because we needed to do that move. But that's just an example, that it needs to go everywhere, otherwise we represent peanuts. The other threat is we abandon, for example, we say, okay, no more oil and gas. No more oil and gas clients. But maybe these are the ones that will have some money to invest in the big capex needed for the energy transition. Maybe if we stop as well, there is currently a problem. We have a lot of people telling us, but you should stop for the moment your restrictions on the oil and gas industry, given the situation, the fact that we might not have some gas for next winter. So we said, no, we are not going away from our trajectory. But still, we have these requests that come from different sides, you see. And it's not so easy, because behind you have a problem of costs for people everywhere. So I agree, we should not say, okay, let's wait for the demand to come down. We need as well to offer products, incentives, create awareness with all of our customers to try and help and reduce, because in the end, it's not about going from thermal cars to electrical cars. We won't have enough electricity. It's not about going from full brown to full green. It's about reducing drastically the energy that we consume, as my colleagues said as well. And it's about changing habits. And frankly, it's very political as well. I agree. If you put a price, it helps. For example, in Société Générale, we put an internal carbon tax. Okay, that was 11 years ago. People were shocked. What's that? Well, on your building, your IT, whatever, we calculate your CO2 emissions, and we have a tax. With the money that we raise, we organize an initiative, which is a kind of challenge, and we had last year 200 proposals. And these are proposals, for example, in terms of stopping the paper, stopping the plastic, stopping whatever, reducing having energy efficiency everywhere. And so we use the money that we collect from the tax to pay for these initiatives, to develop these things. It's nothing, because it's just at the level of the bank. But you see that by putting a price, it motivates people, because they want to reduce the burden. And on top of that, the challenge stimulates them. So there are many different ways to do. I agree, we don't have one recipe, and we need to try. And individually as well, I mean, if you think about that, I guess the compass is as well about sense and responsibility. Do we need to buy these things that we don't really need? I read recently in the book that we've been raised with the fact that maybe we would be happy if we consume so much. And in the end, people have been buying a lot of stuff with money they didn't have. They borrowed, which was good for banks, by the way. So you borrowed a lot of stuff that you don't have the money to pay for, that you don't need. And you do that to show off to people who don't care. That's what I read. Huh? I'm not saying that, but it's not that bad.
We call that creating value.
Yeah, well, in a way. So we lost ourselves in a way. So and for that, this is not a big thing. If you stop, you saw that during the COVID crisis, you stopped going to the supermarket to buy disposable clothes. Did it change your life? COVID did, but that, no. You see? So, but there are so many things that we need to, well, each company needs to have a structured way, organized way, not to go everywhere and to, in the end, have no impact. Yeah.
But surely, regarding this coal finance, I mean, the old energy man that I am has got to react on this. So surely you are talking about pulling the plug on financing new coal plants, not existing coal plants. Otherwise, for existing coal plants, does that mean that the existing outstanding debt on existing coal plants is callable, is exigible?
No, you're right. Legally, we can't do that. So
Yeah.
we stopped new deals, that's for sure.
And on your coal clients are probably...
Yeah. And on top of that, we committed that by 2030, we will not finance companies that are still involved in coal.
By 2030?
Yeah. And that means that for projects we finance over 15 years, for example, so we stopped already 6 years ago, so the portfolio will go down. And for companies, usually we don't go that long. Maybe we do like 5 years financing to corporates. So that means that by 2025, we'll tell some of our clients, sorry, we won't be your bank anymore. And it started, and we reduce a lot of, which is not good, but that's it.
What about your business in Eastern Europe? And,
yeah, it's a problem.
No debt for RWE in Germany?
That's
or
a problem.
Vattenfall? Or
the German coalitions that came power that by the end of last year said that because Germany was supposed to go by 2038 to the end of coal, okay, which is a problem. But the coalition said no, they would increase the pace and they would stop by 2030. But now, as I said before, given the geopolitical situation, we don't know what's going to happen. They tell us, we were supposed to close this and that in terms of coal capacity, but we are in a bad situation, so we don't know. So we'll see what happens. But you're right, it's tough. But people tell us, yes, but you cannot reduce, this is a demand-driven industry, not an offer-driven industry. But the problem is, if we say so, then we need to tackle demand. So back to how do you do everything that you mentioned already, with energy efficiency, switching to maybe sustainable mobility, using your feet more, your bike maybe, and things like that. Yeah.
Will you stop selling advisory jobs to the coal industry? Very bad question. I use my privilege.
So far, I haven't had the chance to say no.
At long last, I can ask all the politically incorrect questions. It's the only.
I'm happy to be here to answer them. But in the environment where I work and in my previous job, because before KPMG, I was in a strategy consulting firm specialized in environment and climate strategy. My colleagues there that were way younger than me are all militants. So we always get these kinds of discussions. Should we advise oil and gas? Should we advise nuclear? Well, my answer is that when we're talking about energy transition, and here I'll take advantage of my previous experience in the IEA, energy transition does not have just one answer. You need to take advantage of all the existing technologies and phase out from coal, for example, in a way that also that there is always an energy security, which is a big problem, if not the case. For example, in my country, Greece, I'm Greek, we used to be coal dependent by 70% because we produce lignite. And 2 years ago, the Prime Minister said, okay, by 2023, we will have 0 coal plants. And they started closing down coal plants. War in Ukraine, dependence of Greece in gas is around 30–40%. So what do? Do you leave a whole country without energy? These are big political questions that it's not my job, to be honest, to answer. But in the energy transition, it's not an easy thing. It needs to happen, but as you said, it always goes back to demand, to change of behavior, to energy efficiency, to decrease of consumption, to change of habits, to production of products that don't consume a lot, for example, or even provide solutions that decrease energy or CO2 emissions from their clients, what is said as scope 4, so emission évitée, avoided emissions. This is another big discussion, to be able to contribute to avoid emissions. So one thing is that a leader should think globally, because big corporations do not operate just in one country. You might have a mining industry that operates in France, in Sweden, for example, Norway, for example, in Southeast Asia, Africa, and there you have to tackle different challenges.
Do we have burning question from the floor to our panelists? You've understood we're going to change business, we're going to stop financing all sorts of aspects and chunks of the economy that we thought we would never abandon. I think Hacina, has been speaking very loud and clear. Any questions from the floor? Yes, gentlemen, please. Is it gentlemen? I can't see you from here. Yeah.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. From all of the four, first of all, thank you so much for coming and taking the time to enlighten us on your strategies. On all of the four different companies that you work for and industries that you work for, and we were talking with my neighbor, we were saying how for some companies, I feel like it's much easier to go into this transition than others. If you look at Schneider Electric, I guess the company is going to end up being a winner because we need to lower the energy consumption, and Schneider Electric has tools and services that will enable you to do this. For the financial sector, okay, there are some difficulties because you need to put away from coal and from fossil fuels, but there will still need to be clean investment. For KPMG, we will always need advising. So I guess it's just a comment that I had, and I don't know if you want to react to it, but that if we had a panel with Air France, with Total Energy, and with, I don't know, Renault even, I think it would be a way different discussion, and I feel like we would be way more pessimistic than we are coming out of this one. That's just a comment.
Gwenaelle, is it easier for you as Schneider Electric US than it would be for Glencore or Rio Tinto or BHP Billiton and all the others? The big names in the extractive industries?
So thank you. Just maybe a few comments. We don't consider that everything is granted. We don't take it for granted. Especially, you're right, we have been positioned very proactively on energy efficiency. We made the positioning on software a few years ago, and this is, in fact, an enabler towards the energy transition. But we are still investing in our products, in our offers, in our services. For example, all the customers aspect that we've been discussing, the scope 4, it's something that we started just a few years ago. So it's fairly new, and we need to continue having this momentum towards customers. And for suppliers, we just started to, embark the suppliers in this journey. So I think that it's not because we are on the right spot with energy efficiency that we shouldn't consider that everything is for granted. On the contrary, we can do more, and we should do more towards suppliers, customers, and ourselves. First comment. Second comment, if you allow me, I'm also a board member of Air France, and you're right, this is a very important topic, but for which Air France is also positioning itself in a way to differentiate on sustainability. And that's not easy, especially because all the alternative fuel, the most sustainable fuels are not always available. But there is also an opportunity to position the company in a way that those fuels are promoted, because there is commitment there. And therefore, on two fronts, Air France is trying to position. The first one is really about having new fleet that is consume less energy. And on the other one, having a commitment towards using new sustainability fuel. And therefore, I think that it's interesting to see that this industry is taking a leadership in order to also make a difference in this environment, for which it's not easy, but on different fronts, either energy efficiency or the use of alternative fuel, you can achieve some concrete, measurable saving emissions.
Thank you, Gwenaelle. I think we've got another question here.
May I add something?
Sorry, Kare. Yes, please.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I wanted to say I quite agree in the fact that I think some industry, I agree with the remark in the room, some industry will have to stop, I guess, some companies to stop their old business. Doesn't mean they're going to die, but let's face it, I guess, even if Air France is doing, I agree with you, probably beautiful things, at the end of the day, we will have to reduce, and the magical fuel doesn't exist yet, and hydrogen, it's not yet at all. So at the end of the day, maybe Air France will think about another way of offering mobility, another value of, I don't know how, but I guess some old industry will have to stop. Let's face it. I'm not saying it's easy again, but I'm saying we have to program that, and to program the transition, the journey to regeneration. And I guess even in energy, by Schneider, probably you need raw material to build your system, and raw material, it's biodiversity. So you have as well in dependency. So reduction is the key word of all of that. I don't see any other issues of extracting areas. We have to reduce our extraction. Let's face it, I mean, for me as well, huh? It's the same for everybody. But let's be clear, for me, I don't see any other way to reach the climate issue and biodiversity issue that are even more dramatic, I would say.
Just one small comment on the comment. It's that your comment basically applies only to operations, so what we call scope 1. But now companies are asked to tackle scope 1, 2, and 3. So if you ask me, for example, I'm not going to say that a mining industry is easier to tackle climate change than an IT sector industry. Yes, I agree, but at the same time, an IT sector industry company will have to tackle scope 3 emissions. First to measure them, which is already a challenge, and then to tackle them. So to engage their customers and their suppliers to change their habits, to change their products, to change everything, which is really not up to them.
I think there is a
yes.
last question before we move to the third and final topic of our panel. Please, sir.
So first of all, thank you all for coming over here. It's great to hear the passion that you bring to this industry and really focusing on reduction and rejuvenation, which is rare for a business school. I guess a question related to that topic and related to how you balance which products or which activities you actually pursue is when we're looking at carbon pricing, what are the internal metrics that your companies use to actually go into it? I know that it was already mentioned, one for like 45, especially mentioning that Christian Gauthier yesterday told us that the advisory would be around $160 per ton of CO2. And if your company isn't using such a high number, why not? And how else are we actually going to be meeting the 1.5 degrees target?
Great question for you, Hacina.
Yeah, well, when I mentioned our internal carbon tax, the price is much lower than what you say. But in the end, this is only on our scope 1 and 2. And so if you compare it to our scope 3, it's peanuts, you see. So we do that to move people. And now we just increased it. But it's still far away from what you say. But it doesn't matter because in the end, that's not really the big challenge. Now, one day, if we say we are going to be net zero, we will not be able to be net zero directly. So we will have to buy, carbon rights, or to try and do this scope 4, try and reduce, or try to finance carbon capture. So, and all that will come to a cost sometimes. Sometimes it will be business opportunities, sometimes it will be a cost. And we will see by then, you're right, it's a very important point, how much it costs. But you know, this, I'm quite a fan of this carbon taxing at the borders and so on, because at some point in my career, I was in charge of scarce resources management. And so, you know, capital, liquidity, and whatever you have. You can consider today that carbon footprint is the new scarce resource that we need to manage. And when you manage a scarce resource for a bank, for example, if you put a price on it, on the capital that is used, on the liquidity, it's amazing how people all of a sudden change their minds. They needed it so much, but all of a sudden they can maybe spare it, you see? So I think it's an important topic. But it's not for us. I mean, it's more a political game as well.
Do you actually anticipate, as a global bank, to fall one day under the jurisdiction of the European Union ETS, under the carbon trading mechanism? Do you think that could apply to you?
That could apply if we need, at the end, if we need to land at a certain level, and we are not. Either we will be forced, or to meet our commitment, which is about our reputation, we will have to do it as well. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Maybe it's time. We've got another 15 minutes or so before cocktail, so it's a very, very tricky situation. You know, cocktail is calling. Maybe it's time to approach the last topic. What do you call a successful climate leader? How do you measure the success in achieving a particular target or whatsoever? Gwenaelle, maybe we start with you.
So for me, to measure success, it's all about execution, making sure that we have the impact that we are talking about. It's a lot about making it happen. So first, on our operations, as I mentioned before. So just an example, we decrease our emission by 60% in just 3 years, and we need to continue. And this is about renewable energy sourcing, it's about energy efficiency, it's about EV, etc., for our own emissions. So I would say first element about climate success is execution, making it happen. First, showing that concretely on our operations, we are making a difference. Second is to do that with customers and suppliers, as I was mentioning. And just to give you an order of magnitude, because we were talking about reduction of emission or reduction of energy consumption, just one example to give an order of magnitude, we've been working with Générale on buildings, and through electrification and digitalization, we enable them to reduce their energy use by 30%, 30%. So you can have meaningful impact. And therefore, for me, climate success is also having concrete, operational, tangible success for customers, but also for suppliers. And all in all, within a company, it's to have a culture that is very much focused, not only on profit, but also on sustainability with the 3 components that I mentioned before. We didn't talk about social, etc., but for us, it's extremely important to have a balanced position between environment and social commitment for our own company in order to attract talent, in order to make sure that within this company, there is the appropriate focus on ESG all in all.
Yeah, we know that we've only scratched the surface, but you are absolutely right. We haven't talked about social policies of corporates and many other issues under the ESG. Karen, what would be success for you?
Personally, if you ask in 1 year someone from my company, you are working for Expanscience, Mustela, or wherever, what is your part in the climate journey or in the impact journey of Expanscience? And if this person working in the factories in Turkey, in Brazil, or wherever can answer that, I am very successful. I'm very happy, because it's the empowerment, as we said, is very important, and we train everybody like Fresk, but not only Fresk this year. The other one is to succeed with my competitors. If I can come back to you in 1 year and say, look, we have worked together, and we can offer something maybe with less impact, and hopefully the big success will be, as I said, to launch only products and services that bring value and restore biodiversity, sequester carbon, and bring health to people. We are a laboratory, as I said, so mission-driven company, so we want to bring health, but health for people, it's health for planet. So it will be a great success if I come back to you with a great cooperation with competitors.
Yeah, so that's interesting what you said, because you were talking about cooperation. You were a great advocate of, talking to your peers, and so did Hacina, by the way, meeting with your peers, engaging in new cooperation with your peers. But then at the end of the day, what you're saying is that the new playground for competition will be achieving climate objectives. And this, and is it what you're saying, actually, that companies are going to compete on their ability to meet carbon neutrality, cleaner product, etc.? Is that the message?
No, sorry if I was not clear. I think our competitors is the climate change. If you don't have any biodiversity left on raw materials, I don't think our business will go very far. So as we see now the issues for our business model, we have to face that the competitors are not the one we know today. And that we are to work together on those issues. Otherwise, about packaging, logistics, or reinventing offers, otherwise there will be no competition because there will be no market. As simple as that. So I'm just saying I want to cooperate with competitors on those climate issues. Of course, the differentiation, the value you want to create, because we are living in a competitive world, I agree, will not be on the packaging I offer, or no, it will be on the value I create for the society. If my product restore the soils, sequester carbons, bring value to the consumer, is very useful, as you said before. Not only co-design, but restorative. I don't know how to explain that better, but this is for me the success. So new rule in competition, and maybe tomorrow we are working, the refillable product, not only loop. You can wash that and come back with your product in drugstores. Alone, it's not economically viable. But here we start with other competitors, and maybe we create a new offer, and maybe tomorrow we will have all the same packaging, and if possible, this packaging will be reusable or no packaging at all. I'm just saying we have to think all together in this industry, well-being industry.
Hacina.
So
being successful.
what does success look like? Let me point out to maybe 2030 to have a horizon. I would say success would be first, I disappear. My job does not exist anymore. We don't have ESG specialists. All the guys are trained. Everybody is aware of what it means, including our clients, not only companies, but customers, private people. We did a great workshop. I don't know if you know about this one, which is called the two-tone workshop. And I showed that to your students when you came to the bank. So a French citizen has about 10 tons of CO2 per year, on average. But if we want to be in line with the Paris Agreement, we need to go down to 2 tons. And that's clearly a matter of changing your habits in your mobility, your housing efficiency, what you eat, meat, of course, but not only. So everything, the clothes you buy, you don't buy, you reuse, it's circular economy. So I would advise you, if you have some time and the possibility to join one of this workshop. It's a 3-hour workshop, and you tackle all these day-to-day things. So we need to be successful to engage into Fresques du Climat, as you mentioned, the Climate College, but these type of workshops as well, and on top of that, as we said before, have common methodologies and so on and so forth. By 2030, we will be successful if this is no more a subject, if it is integrated. If when the budget in the bank is given to a specific division, a budget of scarce resource, it is based on return on equity, of course, but also on return on carbon footprint or what it brings to society and so on and so forth. It has to be embedded in the DNA of our activities. It's not completely the case today. It's no more a purely specialist subject, but it's not yet in the DNA.
So these will be the KPIs of the bank in 2030.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
I'm not sure everybody will agree on that.
I will look at your broker's notes by then if I'm still alive. Anyway, Nikolaos, so success. but
yes,
how do you sell success to your clients?
Well, as it's already said, I also don't believe that success is something that can be measured now. What we can do for the next 2-3 years is to see if we are on the right path to success. And this can be done by different kinds of evaluations, where you can evaluate where you are in terms of where your targets are and the pathway to reach your targets, where you are in terms of R&D, of percentage of your capex for R&D investments to create new innovative products, low carbon products, where you are in terms of engagement of your clients and your suppliers, what are the incentives, the engagement of your management group of the company, what is the level of engagement. So yes, as it's already said, in 2030 we should be able to measure part of that, because neutrality is 2050, and to see if we are on the right path.
Just a question for Gwenaelle. Do you think that by 2030, 2040, non-financial reporting will be more important than international financial reporting standards?
I think that if more people could communicate both at the same time on financial and extra-financial with strong commitments, internal and external, first, that would be a first good step. I think transparency in our domain, in climate commitment, is absolutely critical. Just to make sure that at the end of the day, we have robust methodology and everybody is taking it seriously. And I think the worst could be that this is not going in the right direction. So I would first encourage that everybody would communicate both at the same time, extra financial and financial reporting every quarter, so that we see where we stand, we measure, we track, and we communicate transparently.
Any big question or not so big question from the floor, and before we close up shop? A question from the gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much for this panel. Well, the question is related to one report that was about 2 months old, and it's about the CSO in corporations. At PwC published it, and it mentioned like 30% of the companies that were in the survey had like a CSO within the company, and 30% of those companies who has a CSO report at C-suite level. So that 70% left, what is needed for those companies for those CSOs to be in the C-suite level, and for the rest of the companies to have a CSO, and also related to what Hacina mentioned, some companies even says now that they don't want a CSO because sustainability should be all over the workplace and not within one person of one area. So what are your takeaways about this?
I can
question for all three of you.
Exactly. If you want,
I can start.
Yeah, I can give our example. CSO in the bank was in the general secretary of the bank, okay, and it was to deal with reputational risk, engagement, and risks. And it's been so for years and years and years. When I joined, end of last year, the function was brought to the CEO of the bank. So that's an evolution. And effectively, at some point, either it will be mixed with strategy, as you have with my colleagues, or simply disappear, or just be like a small team, you know, in charge of the future developments, the new regulations, the innovation. That's probably, you know, the future of, in my case, in any case.
Karen, any view on your position as CSO?
My position, well, I am in the steering committee, so I report to the president of the company. But as I told you, I am in charge as well of the open innovation, which is a bit what you've just said before, which is how to accelerate, to test different offer or services to make this strategy real, the change maker role a bit. I strongly believe, I don't know if CSR, our dream is that our job is dead in 10 years, I don't know, maybe. The dream is that every function of the company, every direction to integrate CSR. That's the future. I don't know if you will need 1 or 2 people to coordinate, to be more technical, to calculate, to measure, etc. Probably. But at the end of the day, every CEO, every business finance manager, HR in marketing has to integrate it in his, of course, in his day-to-day job. So I really believe this is the future. I'm not sure it answers to the question to say how can we do that CSR integrate companies. I'm not sure about that, but okay.
Gwenaelle, how do you see that CSO? One single person or several positions across the board?
So I completely agree on the fact that everybody should be concerned about CSR all in all. So every single person within the organization should feel that they're ambassador of the CSR commitment that a company has taken. However, having a positioning at the executive committee level, reporting to the CEO, and having a broader landscape, a broader scope, strategy, sustainability, merger and acquisition, etc., it's just to make sure that if there is any roadblock, if there is any mixed priorities because the uncertain climate or whatever, or if there is any decision to be made, we make sure that the angle of sustainability is already part of the decision. So I think it's also showing externally and internally that we are very serious, and we want to have someone keeping the momentum internally and externally on this topic. But at the end of the day, again, my commitment is to make sure that I'm not alone, that everybody in the organization feel part of it.
You've got your answer. This couldn't be more clear or clearer. Any last question? Do we have time? How are we for time? Mr. Time Manager? We don't have time. Which means that we do not have time. It's I'm an HEC professor. I stated the obvious. So if we have no time for any more question, then I will encourage you to ask all your questions at the cocktail, which takes place, I guess, not too far from here. But in the meantime, I would like you to join me in showing our appreciation to the quality of our panelists and this panel. Thank you very much indeed, all 3 of you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Michel, and thank you, panel. This was amazing and a great closing of these 2 days, Climate Days at HEC. As the song goes, before you leave, let me tell you a little something. I just wanted to say thanks, huge thanks to all the speakers that we had over the last 2 days for sharing their insights and their stories with us. I also wanted to thank all the HEC staff who participated in the preparation of Climate Days. It's been a lot of work, and I think you all did a great job. And of course, I would like to thank all the participants, all of you, for being part of this first edition. And I personally I'm leaving this event with a lot of food for thought, a lot of new knowledge, a lot of open questions also, because as we've seen, the transition is really challenging, and we are only in the beginning of the journey. But most importantly, I'm leaving these days with a sense of hope. I think it's inspiring to see so many bright people at all levels in all different types of organizations, be it businesses, startups, governments, or NGOs, working towards making the transition possible. And this gives me a glimpse of hope, and I hope you feel the same about it. And with that, you're all invited to join us at the cocktail. Thank you very much.